Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Contrast Security LinkedIn Live event. Thank you all for joining us. I'm Lisa Vaz, Contrast Senior Content Marketing Manager. Today, we'll be focusing on Pillar 4 of the Zero Trust Maturity Model, the pillar that concerns application security. We'll be discussing Zero Trust, a security architecture meant to protect applications from malicious actions, regardless of user authentication or origin. At this point, organizations are looking at a 2024 deadline for meeting all Zero Trust requirements. Here to discuss what that will entail are Contrast Security co-founder and CTO Jeff Williams and Contrast Federal Sales Specialist James Kovac. Could you both tell us, well, first of all, welcome. Could you both tell us in your own words what Zero Trust is all about and who needs to worry about it? Jeff, could you start us off?
Sure. Thanks, Lisa. Appreciate you having us today. So Zero Trust is not a technology that you go buy. It's a philosophy. It's an architecture for how to set up networks and handle security. And in the old days, we used to have people set up perimeters, firewall boundaries that would try to detect any bad behavior coming in and stop it at the perimeter. Problem is, you don't have enough context at the perimeter to really do a good job at that. So in Zero Trust architecture, you're saying, hey, we're not going to trust the perimeter. We're not going to trust anything but ourselves to defend ourselves. And so in Zero Trust, everything has its own defenses. Starts with authentication and authorization. But then, of course, you also want to make sure that each workload has the right defenses. It's been tested. It detects attacks and so on. And so the way I think, the way that Zero Trust always makes me think is, if there is no perimeter, then there's no internal and external. You don't think about where your workloads are running anymore. Everything's on the public internet. So even your precious internal apps, now they're public to everyone. And so then that has a lot of implications on what you need to do to secure them.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jeff. So there's no more internal and external. They're all public. Just make an assumption. How about you, James? Your turn. What is Zero Trust all about in your view?
Yeah, thanks, Lisa, and thanks, Jeff, for having me on. Much appreciated. I actually like a definition from Forrester, I think really summarizes the Zero Trust philosophy. And their definition is, Zero Trust is an information security model that denies access to applications and data by default. And I really like that for two reasons. One is it calls out data and applications specifically, and we'll touch on that later. But the second one is it calls out denying access by default. And I think that's very important. I think it sets the tone for everything that follows. And it implies that access to the applications and the data from here on out has to be earned or certified. And I think that's very important.
Speaks to the name Zero Trust. Well, let's talk about Pillar 4, which is all about application security. Jeff, could you tell us about the 5 pillars in the CISA Zero Trust Maturity Model?
Yeah, sure. So like you said, there's 5 pillars. They're identity, devices, network, applications, and data. And I'm going to focus in on Pillar 4 applications. That's where we work. That's what we do here. And so remember, if you're, I think this is a really important pillar, first of all, because if your apps and APIs aren't secure, then all the rest of Zero Trust falls apart. It doesn't, matter. And so imagine an attacker that compromises one of your employee laptops, which it's going to happen. Once they do that, now they've got access to credentials. Maybe they just steal credentials. It doesn't matter. They've got access to this application. And so now they can directly attack one of your critical systems. Maybe they exploit a CVE in an open source library like Log4Shell, or they find a OWASP top 10 type vulnerability in your code, and then you're totally owned. Mm-hmm. So under the application pillar, there's a few requirements. And this is coming from the CISA Zero Trust Maturity Model. They just put out version 2 of this thing, which is kind of cool. And they added some new application security pieces underneath the 4th pillar. But the high level is here under the application pillar. You have to make your apps public. So you've got to put them out there. The danger there is kind of obvious. You have to have threat protections, not just WAF. Like WAF would just be another perimeter and it would blow up the zero trust philosophy. What you really want is distributed protection. So each app protects, each workload protects itself, something like runtime apps, application self-protection or RASP. You have to monitor what's going on. So it's not just enough just to have protections, but you got to monitor. And most companies today, most agencies today are completely blind to attacks at the application layer. So that's kind of the production stuff. In pre-production, you've got to ensure that the whole app is tested. So you've got to do really good AppSec testing, both for libraries and for custom code, and not just for CVEs. Custom code vulnerabilities are critical. And you need to harden your CI/CD pipelines so that they protect against SolarWinds type attacks. If the attacker takes over your build server, it's not going to be very good for the integrity of your software. And so what you want is a really well-hardened pipeline. And then there are requirements in the maturity model here about ensuring that that pipeline automates security testing, configuration, like security configuration, and security policy governance. So they're really pushing for a fully automated pipeline into production and applications that protect themselves.
Okay. And so achieving zero trust while empowering an agency's mission is the challenge all federal agencies are facing today. The first question is, where do they even start? James, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, this is a great question. Obviously, to help agencies get started, CISA has put out the zero trust maturity model and kind of organized the IT landscape into 5 distinct pillars. So in terms of where agencies should start, I like to go back to what John Kindervag, who is known in the industry as the founder of Zero Trust, what he says. And recently at a GuiTech summit in Annapolis, he mentioned, data is the goal of hackers today. That's what they're going for. So whether they're trying to hack a network or a person's credentials or a device, they don't necessarily care about that person or that network or that device. They care about what that person, device, or network has access to in terms of data. That's what they're trying to get to. So I think you start, with the data pillar. You secure your data, right? That's the gold. And then I think the next part is what's the most intimate thing to the data is the applications. Behind every agency, there's a mission, and there are applications that take data and manipulate data and empower that mission. And so I think that's the next step, right? You start with the data, you secure, and you work your way out. And the applications in particular, because they empower the agency, that's where I think that they should start to focus more.
Mm-hmm. They empower financial systems that power the U.S. economy. You've said all of those systems are powered by these applications. So you start with the data and you go then to the applications. Well, James, which of the 5 pillars of zero trust are agencies actually prioritizing? Are they prioritizing data and applications?
Yeah, this is kind of funny. So, with that logic, you would argue, data and applications are kind of the most valuable. You would think you would start there. But what I'm actually seeing is a lot of agencies, they're starting with networks and identity first. And I think this is a little bit of just human instinct, right? In the past, the cybersecurity strategy has always been protect and block at the perimeter, right? And so that's historically where the most resource investment has been. And so when they're faced with a new challenge, as in, implementing a zero trust strategy, they go where they're familiar, and they're going to, their network and their identity pillars, and they're focusing there. But I think it's more so just because that's where a lot of the resources and investment have been over time. And so it's a natural feeling of a place to start. And, to be fair, in the application pillar, up until the advent of runtime protection, there hasn't really been a way to secure the applications, right? I mean, the application security companies that we're familiar with, whether you're running a SAST scan or a dynamic scan, right? at the end of the day, they're really just quality assurance reports, right? They're not actually securing anything. They're saying, hey, you got a problem, maybe here's how to fix it, where to fix it, but until you fix it, you still have a problem. So they haven't actually been able to secure anything. And then as a cybersecurity expert, these CISOs are saying, okay, that's a pillar. If there's not really a way to secure that, let me go to the networks, the identities, the devices, let me lock down access there, let me start there. And so I think now with, runtime protection and contrast solutions, there is something that they can do on that pillar now. And I think we're going to start to see a little bit of a reprioritization because the applications are so critical to the data and so intimate with the data. I think we're going to start to see a reprioritization and a focus on pillar 4.
Cool. So it sounds more like force of habit is a big part of this. People are used to turning to secure the network because they haven't really been able to secure applications. Interesting. So as I understand it, the point of zero trust is to prevent unauthorized or dangerous access to government data and services by consistently verifying user credentials across network checkpoints. Is this a huge lift? What kind of technology overhaul is required to implement such a thing? I want to get both of your takes on this. Jeff, let's start with you.
Well, I think that is the perception of zero trust, is that it's all about verifying user credentials. But I think if you actually read the maturity model, you'll see a much more sophisticated set of thinking about zero trust. If you listen to the product vendors out there hawking zero trust products, they'll say, well, we'll add this identity and access control stuff to your layers and you'll be done with zero trust. But what James was just saying is really important. The model kind of works inside out. And it, unfortunately, in the zero trust maturity model, it's backwards to this, but I think you should read it upside down. If you, the 5th pillar, and then work out a layer, you're at the applications. Applications govern access to the data. Then outside that, there's a network that allows you to connect with the applications. Then there's devices which talk to the network from the client side. And then there's identity, which is who is talking to the devices and the networks and the applications and the data, right? But you want to start with the data. The best protections are closest to the data because they know what the data is. They understand what interactions ought to be allowed. And so, really, I believe the applications are the best point to do this. Now, what kind of technology overhaul is required to do this? That was your question. And I think there are products for each of the different pillars, but at the application layer, I think looking at runtime protection really hard is a great idea. It's a very fast way to make whole classes of application layer vulnerabilities go away. So for instance, the folks that were out there using RASP on their applications weren't susceptible to Log4j. And not just after it was discovered. It wasn't like it was blocking a CVE signature. RASP prevented the underlying conditions that allowed that Log4Shell vulnerability to exist. So things like unsafety serialization and expression language injection and XXE and SQL injection, command injection, and all the rest. RASP hardens your application layer and makes those classes of vulnerabilities go away. So it's really powerful. And it also provides the monitoring that's also required in the maturity model so that you're continuously monitoring those applications so you can keep an eye on the threat and what attack vectors are being used and which systems are being targeted and things like that.
So definitely runtime production is important in this discussion. Thank you for that, Jeff. So James, what are you seeing with the agencies that you talk to and work with? What's their pain level? How onerous is this for them?
Yeah, I've attended quite a few summits and government conversations, and it's a big lift. Government leaders are being asked to implement something, and they not only do they have to find solutions per se for each pillar, but they have to make sure that those solutions all integrate and work well together. And that, I think, is a challenge in of itself, right? You might have something that's really good at this pillar, but if it doesn't work for the others and integrate well, then you don't really have a solution, right? So you have a zero trust for each pillar, but you have a zero trust altogether. So it's definitely a big lift. That being said, I do like what on the federal side, an industry leader, a friend of mine, Jerry Karen, says. He's the CIO over at ITA, and what he implores agencies to do is start with what you have, and with a few minor tweaks, you may actually be able to optimize a zero trust model on certain pillars, and a complete overhaul is not necessarily required. So kind of just say, hey, take inventory. What do I have? How can I fine tune, tweak it to get to zero trust, knowing that it's going to be a multi-year, it's an incremental process. It's going to take time, but it is, yes, it is a big lift for sure.
Okay, yeah, it does sound like a big lift. It's nice to hear your reassuring words about it, that doesn't have to be a complete overhaul. Start with what you've got. But so integration of these integration of these disparate solutions for each pillar is one issue. I'd like to hear from both you about the what other primary challenges are there for agencies working toward zero trust, like rebuilding or replacing existing legacy infrastructure, insufficient IT staff expertise. What do you think, Jeff?
So it's a little bit different. There's no one way this affects companies, because a lot of it depends on where they are right now. But I like the way Ed Amoroso, who's the former CISO of AT&T and now runs Tag Cyber, the way he describes the process. He said, the move from traditional perimeter-based environments to zero trust environments is a process of, he called it explode, offload, reload. So what that means is take the workloads that you have, like these monolithic workloads, exploding them into different services, moving those to the cloud. That's offload. We're going to put them in cloud workloads and get them scalable and in repeatable environments, and maybe have CI/CD pipelines producing them automatically. And then reload means think about the security defenses that you used to have in the perimeter-based environment, and you've got to make sure you got to reload that new workload environment with new security defenses to achieve those same goals. And I don't think of it like, well, we had one big firewall, so we're going to reload our workloads, each with its own little firewall. I think we want to reload it with new modern technologies that work in the cloud native environment and so on. So to me, I think the big challenge here is realizing that sometimes you have to slow down to go fast. Currently, enterprise perimeter-based protections are unsustainable. They're not secure. The perimeter-based approach has always been really porous to the extent that I don't really even think it exists. And we have to get away from that. We've got to move to a more defensible environment, and zero trust is a solid philosophy for doing that. It's not the only one, but it's a good, repeatable way of getting a secure environment in place with new modern defenses. And once you do that, then you can unlock a much faster development process, much smoother innovation, much faster deployment of value to your customers. So I think it's like, hey, you know what, we gotta rebase this stuff. We'll get a new environment, but then we can go fast, and it's worth doing from both a security perspective and an innovation perspective.
Okay, all right, got it. Explode, offload, reload.
Exactly.
I like it. It's violent. It's creative and violent. Okay, James, what's your take? What are the top 3 challenges you're seeing in the government facing zero trust?
Yeah, I love that Jeff kind of focused on the technical challenge of it all. It's funny, the 3 challenges I see the most are a little bit more just top level business. Budgets in the federal government, budgets are often planned a year or more in advance. So when new directives and things come down, the government has a little bit of a problem reacting quickly to things like that, right? So budgets is a big one. They've got to do these implementations of zero trust. That's going to require new technology. That's going to require fine-tuning current technology, all of which costs money. So budgets is a big challenge I hear government leaders mentioning. as well as culture and training. It's interesting that culture would be up there, but I hear it over and over again. And it's because there's a lot of reputation and expertise tied to legacy technology. And so with that, there are often political and bureaucratic factors at play that government leaders have to kind of work through. And it's in the top three, which is interesting. And then training, right? Zero trust training isn't a one and done. As zero trust solutions evolve, as the methodology evolves, training is going to be a constant challenge, right? You can have the best technology in the world, but if your staff doesn't know to not click on that phishing email, then so training is going to continue to be a challenge. But those are the top three that I'm seeing.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. So there's a 2024 deadline for meeting all zero trust requirements. How far along are the federal agencies you've worked with or spoken to, James?
Yeah, it's funny, deadlines in government, that's just a funny sentence, right? I think realistically, agencies are doing what they can today with what they have today. They're trying to optimize whatever their current budget is to start on the zero trust journey, right? They're putting in budget requests for next year. So we're going to see, I think, really next year, a lot of investment and reprioritization for zero trust. So they're doing what they can today. I don't believe they're going to hit the 2024. I think, they're going to do what they can, and what they can't do, they're going to, seek exemptions or extension to the timeline. And I think realistically, it's probably going to be closer to 2025, 2026,
Okay.
before agencies can truly claim that they're actually acting and executing a zero trust model.
Right. So what about the second version of CISA's zero trust maturity model? It was just released in April. One of the biggest changes was the addition of a new initial stage on top of the traditional advanced and optimal stages of the first version. CISA added the stage to acknowledge that organizations begin their journey towards zero trust architecture from different starting points. James, what are your thoughts about the second version?
Yeah, I think the more that CISA clarifies and provides guidance to the agencies, the better. But I think, it's definitely helpful. But I think agency leaders also understand we're still really early in this zero trust methodology and process. And so there's going to be more revisions. There's going to be more versions as time goes on. So I don't think that, agency leaders they're definitely trying to align, to the latest versions, but they also are keeping in their mind, like, this is going to be updated. There's going to be changes. And so it's kind of an evolving process.
Yeah, sounds reasonable. So let me ask you, Jeff, for which aspects of Pillar 4, the application security pillar, does contrast technology make sense?
Oh, great question. So contrast covers a lot of Pillar 4. Doesn't cover everything. We don't do, one of the requirements of Pillar 4 is that you move your apps to the public cloud and make them publicly accessible. We don't do that. Another one is that it says you have to do application layer authentication and access control. And that's not something that we do. But we do the rest. Those are, I think there's about 8 different subcategories in the application pillar, and we do the rest. It covers threat protection. We talked about using RASP. That's a function that Contrast provides to monitor your applications continuously for attacks, identify attacks, give you full visibility, and prevent those exploits from exploiting vulnerabilities in your applications, whether they're in your custom code or in open source code. So it's really powerful protection that you can get started with, very quickly. Contrast also, like shifting earlier in the process a little bit, Contrast also helps your developers make sure that the code they're producing is secure. So we meet the security testing pillar here. We support putting all that stuff in the CI/CD pipeline so that every time you do a build, you get real-time security results back to your developers so they can make fixes really quickly. And we do the sort of the real-time visibility and analytics across the whole portfolio So it's really, I think it's fascinating to see our customers, quickly get deployed and quickly get real-time visibility into the security of all their applications and APIs, wherever they're hosted. Could be multi-cloud, containers, Kubernetes, on-prem, all of that can come into one dashboard and give you really great analytics so that you can manage application security effectively. So the way I think of it, Contrast is zero trust for AppSec. It's a very zero trust compatible approach because Contrast installs on your workloads and goes to work in the background forever. It'll identify vulnerabilities automatically, analyze your libraries, give you SBOMs for all your platforms, find vulnerabilities very accurately, and it will protect your applications in production from being exploited. So this distributed approach means that it scales tremendously. And so you don't have these kind of backlogs and delays and, oh, my scan result doesn't finish during the pipeline, so I got to wait 2 days and make tickets and, never get around to fixing stuff. We're talking about everything happens in real time. New attack, you'll see it in seconds. New vulnerability, you'll see it immediately as soon as you build that code. So, really powerful zero trust approach to the application layer. That's where we live.
Okay, great. Well, Jeff, James, thank you so much for all of your insights into zero trust. I know we're coming up against our deadline, but before we let you go, do you have any parting words of advice for organizations grappling with zero trust? James, anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think, specifically, speaking to agencies, patience is a virtue, right? So formulate your plan, execute your plan, and then revise the plan as needed. But patience above all. Don't rush into a high purchase scenario that ends up not working out. Formulate the plan, execute the plan, revise the plan.
Okay. Jeff, any last parting words of advice?
Yeah, I think similar to James, I think you have to view this as a transformation that's going to take some time. And the way that I've seen most organizations manage it is that they do some pilot projects early. They get some great teams put together. They start building out, they do it for one app or a handful of applications and transform them. They turn them into zero trust architecture applications, and then they spread the lessons learned. And as you spread, you standardize things. So you may choose a certain platform that makes it easier for development teams to come on board. And so that's what I like to think of as this like an empty wagon when it starts out and people start climbing on, and more people climb on and more people climb on. And pretty soon you've become a zero trust organization culturally, and your people get it. And it's just, that's the path to success, as opposed to just trying to go, really broad, really fast or something. You want to see that value with proven efforts early on.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you again, Jeff and James, for giving us this overview into the zero trust journey. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in. We'll look forward to seeing you next time on LinkedIn Live. Take care and stay secure.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you.